Hello. It is a very sunny morning in London, and I have a big pile of new books which I'm interested in reading. As always, I don't expect I'll find time to read all of these books, but I enjoy surveying what has been published recently and considering what I might read next. And if you have read any of these books, or if you're interested in reading any of these books, please let me know about that in the comments below. This is a whole mixture of books that some publishers have kindly sent me and others I've bought myself. So first off, I want to highlight that the paperback edition of Ali Smith's most recent novel, Gliff, has just come out with this really lovely cover, and I found this to be such an emotional read. I made a whole video talking about my reaction to this book, and when I was discussing it in my Women's Prize predictions video with Anna, I started crying because I got so emotional remembering certain scenes from this story, which follows two siblings in an increasingly totalitarian landscape as they're trying to find safety and evade being identified and defined in ways which they don't believe to be true. And there's also a horse in the story, and it's just such a beautiful and really powerful tale. And it's also the first in two books that she's writing. Another novel also called Glyph, but spelled a different way, is going to be published later this year. So I'm really looking forward to that. But yeah, this is a really lovely new paperback edition. Show Me Where It Hurts by Claire Gleeson. And this is a debut Irish novel about a woman who thinks that her life is completely content. She has a husband and two children, but then her husband makes a terrible decision which completely shatters their lives, and it follows her as she tries to find the strength to carry on and to survive. Wild Boar by Hannah Lutz, and this is a novel set in a small Finnish town which has a growing population of wild boar, and it traces the invasion of these wild boar into this village, but also follows a number of individuals that inhabit it. And so it charts the changing human and animal relationships to our environment as the ecosystem continues to change. Ibis by Justin Haynes, which has an absolutely beautiful cover, and this novel is set in Trinidad and follows the life of a man who originally arrives on the island as a Venezuelan refugee, and it follows him throughout the course of his life and a dramatic incident where a witch or a suspected witch is killed by locals, but also a mysterious profusion of scarlet ibis that appear in the local community. So this is considering the history of Trinidad as well as the near present. The Night Trembles by Nadia Terranova, and this novel is set in 1908 and follows the events of a devastating earthquake that occurs in Messina and how the community reacts to that, but also follows an individual who is about to be married and how these larger events change the course of her life. And the great French author Annie Ernaux, winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature, says of this book, "I greatly admire Nadia Terranova's latest novel, The Night Trembles, for how it is constructed and for its human depth, how the darkness coexists with generosity. It is quite simply magnificent." And also this is translated by Anne Goldstein, who's translated many great Italian authors. Red Dog Farm by Nathan Ian Miller, and this novel follows a young man who grows up in rural Iceland on a farm, and he's very content with his life there, but when he comes of age, he goes to university in Reykjavik, and this changes his perspective of the world and his relationship to his family. So it follows this tension between sort of rural rural life and more like urban existence, and being more connected with the wider world. And the author himself lives on a farm in Vermont. City of Fiction by Yu Hua. This novel is set in the early 20th century and follows a married couple who has a child, but the wife leaves her family to pursue her own ambitions and go on her own journey, but her husband follows after her with their child, trying to reconnect with her. So it's about this epic story of a relationship, but also the transformations going on in China during that time. Next, I have a trilogy of novels by French author Constance Debre, which have been brought out in these very attractive new editions, and they are all about the semi-autobiographically inspired experiences of the author of leaving a relationship with a man and pursuing sexual and romantic relationships with women. And the most recent novel is Name, and this is more exploring the author's childhood and past. So it's looking at identity in this really interesting way. Vanishing World, and this is the newly translated novel by the great Japanese author Sayaka Murata, and this is set in a world where the norm isn't that people have children through intercourse, but through artificial insemination, and it follows an individual who joins a new community where people, both women and men, are fitted with artificial wombs. And so I'm really keen to see how this plays out in this strange, like, alternate reality. But Sayaka Murata writes about people's place in the world, their uneasy positions within society in such a fascinating way through her novels like Convenience Store Woman. I think she is so interesting. Also, the inside cover has this really vibrant, bright green. The Expanded Earth by Mikey, who is also a director, animator, and illustrator. And the story of this novel follows a cataclysmic event where everyone in the world is shrunk down to about a tenth of their normal size. So it's about how our perspective of the world changes given this event and our new relationship in size to it. And also the story is illustrated throughout by the author's own drawings. So I think it has a kind of Gulliver's Travel type feel to the story. Iron Lung by Kirstine Reffstrup, and this novel begins in the 1950s following a girl who is struck down by polio, and she's not able to breathe any longer on her own, so she has to live in a hospital in Copenhagen in an iron lung, and this is her entire existence. But it's also the story of an individual who's intersex, who lives in an orphanage, and about the connection between these two characters' lives. Stone Angels by Helena Rao, and this novel follows a woman whose life is completely upturned when her mother commits suicide, and in trying to find answers of why this occurred, she traces her family back to Korea and begins researching her family's past, and discovers unexpected things about her family life, but also the history of the country when it was occupied by Japan. What a Time to Be Alive by Jenny Mustard, and this novel follows a young woman who grows up in rural Sweden, but who moves to Stockholm to go to university, and she doesn't have any money, and she feels very timid and awkward socially, but she meets someone who is incredibly confident, and she hopes through this possible new relationship and connection that she will find confidence in herself. So it's about this uneasy transition to adulthood and trying to figure yourself out in this new situation. Room on the Sea by Andre Aciman, which follows a man and woman in New York City who have begun a tentative relationship with each other, and they dream of going to Italy together. And the way that Aciman writes about relationships and all of the messy feelings that go in with sexual relations. He writes about them so well. I was obviously a massive fan of Call Me By Your Name, although I thought the sequel to that, Find Me, I felt a bit more mixed about that. So I'm keen to see how he writes about relationships in an entirely different context. Next, I have a couple of new short story collections. So first there is Hail Mary by Funmi Fetto, and these are stories about 9 different Nigerian women following their experiences through divorce and economic struggles between London and Nigeria. Then there is Deliverywoman by Eva Wyles, and these short stories follow a whole cast of individuals as they are exploring the loneliness of modern existence, and so that's perfectly encapsulated by this cover photograph of a painting by Edward Hopper. I also got a copy of the new Granta magazine, which is always fascinating to read through as it collects together new fiction, nonfiction, poetry, and photographs, and it always has a particular theme. And so the theme for this issue is Dear Friends, and it includes new fiction by Joshua Cohen and Gary Indiana and Susie Boyd, but also poetry by Anne Carson. And when I saw this cover, I thought, oh, I've seen this photograph somewhere before on the cover of another book, and then I realized that it was also used on the cover of Joyce Carol Oates' short story collection, Faithless, and this is a Nan Golden photograph. Penguin Classics is soon celebrating a 90th anniversary, and so they're bringing out new editions of 90 of their titles, and I have 5 of them here, which I've already started reading through, and which I'm really excited to explore more of, because there's a short story collection by the great Katherine Mansfield, a Dill, Pickle, and but also H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, which I've never read, but I love the film version of this, and also Mary Shelley's Transformation. I've only ever read Frankenstein, so I've been really wanting to read more of her work, and Christina Rossetti, there's a lot of her poetry in here. I've only ever read Goblin Market, so I'd be really keen to read more of her poetry. And there's a book Coal by Audre Lorde, which is a collection of her poetry, I think, and I absolutely loved her book Zombie. I also have a number of books which are new editions of classics or modern classics. So first there is the book Separate Rooms by Pier Vittorio Tondelli, and this novel was first published in 1989 in Italian, and I think in English translation was first published in 1992. And it follows the story of a relationship of 2 men, one who is older and one who is younger, and the younger man is dying, and so it's about the tension in this relationship, knowing that it's going to end when the younger man dies, and wanting to the older man wanting there to be a separation between them to kind of emotionally protect himself, so they stay in other rooms. So it's following this very tragic story of love affair. Fish Tales by Nettie Jones, and this was a novel that was first published in 1984, and Nettie Jones's editor was Toni Morrison, and it follows the hedonistic adventures of a young woman between New York City and Detroit, and so was seen as very pioneering for the time, and this is the very first time that this is being published in the UK. There's also a new edition of Washington Square by Henry James, which I've never read before, and this comes with a new introduction by Colm Tobin, and this follows the story of a young woman who's an heiress who comes from a very privileged family, and she falls for a penniless man. So it follows the tension of that relationship, and it's set in this real place of Washington Square, where Henry James grew up in. A couple years ago, I also read Hanya Yanagihara's novel Paradise, which was heavily inspired by this novel, so I'm really keen to go back and read it now. Everyman's Library has brought out a new collection of selected short stories and essays by the great Cynthia Ozick, and she has actually selected these herself, and this comes with an introduction by her, and she has written so many fantastic novels, and she's been such an astute literary critic for so long, and this actually includes an essay which is called Washington Square. Now, last year, the author Paul Auster sadly died, and he was a really important part of my early reading years of reading adult literature for the first time, and now there's a new graphic novel edition of his New York Trilogy, a series of books that combine this postmodernism with detective and private investigator literature, and they're such gripping stories, but also really clever ones, and I think it's really exciting that there's now this graphic novel edition of it, which probably a lot more young people will now discover and enjoy his stories through. And finally, I have a group of new nonfiction on a whole fascinating range of topics. And first, there's a very powerful sounding book called Ordinary People Don't Carry Machine Guns by Artem Chapai, who is a Ukrainian novelist and journalist, and up until 2022, he was a committed pacifist, but with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, he himself became a soldier. So he's reflecting upon this experience and being called to arms due to necessity. The Illegals by Sean Walker. So in the year 2010, 10 Russian undercover agents were arrested in America, and they had been living in America for decades undercover. So the author explores their stories, how they were able to remain under the radar for so long, and how this speaks to past but also current political conflicts. A Barrister for the Earth, and this explores a number of legal cases that are brought against different governments to hold them accountable for damage that they have done to the environment. So this is a different take on environmental activism, rather than trying to restore or protect the environment through immediate action, through holding governments legally accountable for their actions. Nothing Left to Lose, or How Not to Start a Commune by Jeff Richards, which is a memoir following the author's experiences in the late 60s as he and his friend wanted to form an intentional community. They wanted to create a ranch, but they only ever managed to create this community in a squalid apartment in Denver, and so it follows his misadventures, but how their intentions were good. And I've always been really interested in the idea of communal living. When I was younger, I'd planned for a while to join a commune myself, although I never actually did, although I visited a number of them. So I'm really interested in following the stories of people who actually attempted this. And finally, there is the memoir All That Glitters by Orlando Whitfield, and this follows the author's story of how when he was younger, he and his friend were aspiring art dealers, but eventually his friend was found to have committed a massive fraud which completely rocked the entire art world. So this is the story of that experience. Yes, those are all the books that I want to discuss today. Like I said, I would love to know if you have read any of these books, if you would encourage me to read any of them sooner rather than later, or if you're interested in reading any of them now. Or are there any books that you have got recently that you're really looking forward to reading? I would love to hear about that, but I hope you have a lovely day, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.